Bitcoin and the altcoin market saw a massive drawdown. We had a few things going against us. We had Germany selling, Mt. Gox repayment sentiment is in the gutter. Bitcoin has rallied since then a little bit. Do we have more downside to come? And what if the top really is in? We're going to have that discussion with Forrest joining us today. We're also going to talk about potential catalysts for a big altcoin and Bitcoin rally towards the end of the year. How are the markets looking? Which dips have we bought or are we looking to buy? We're going to take a look at the markets. What is going on? All that and much, much more on today's episode of Sin City Crypto. Let's go. It's your boy, Big Rob, back in the house. Welcome to Sin City Crypto. If it's your first time checking us out, we're the entertainment-focused cryptocurrency channel where we take old, boring, and stale beer cans and turn them into a stylish cowboy hat. Is that a Pabst Blue Ribbon? It is a Pabst Blue Ribbon hat. I wore this yesterday while I was grilling up for the Fam Bam. Wow, did you also wear a Speedo? I wore a wife beater, and or also the technical term would be a Hanes A shirt. Careful of the words you use here, okay? I didn't make up the terminology for that, but we all know what the Hanes A shirt. What that term? The wife beater? Well, let's not go down that road. Okay. The road I do want to go down on is the road of Forrest, or a road with Forrest. Anyways, Forrest is joining us today. It's been we didn't have him last week as the man was enjoying some quality vacation time, but we brought him back this week. He's been joining our channel since we're at like 800 subscribers. Love having him on. Forrest, what's up, bro? Did you dump the markets?
No, I got caught off sides. I was dead wrong. I called bottom way too early, got a little too long too early, but we're surviving. That's the name of the game. What
do you think? Okay, so let me ask you, right? And shout out to you, by the way, right? And no one's ever going to get anything perfect, right? I've been wrong on multiple things. Robin's always wrong on things. But what did you like looking back at it? What did you miss? Did something come out of nowhere that you didn't expect? Is it Mt. Gox? Is it Germany? Is there anything that kind of stands out to you?
Yeah, the pretty disgusting fake out on the Bitcoin chart, which I'm sure we'll go over. There's just a perfect inverse head and shoulders after like 100-day accumulation on or range on Bitcoin that just looked beautiful to long. It got rejected and didn't flip directions on the rejection like I should have in hindsight. The other thing is underestimated the impact of outflows. So you kind of had Germany selling their Bitcoin out of nowhere. It kind of just was not planned, or not. I'm going to say not planned, but not really foreseeable months in advance. Kind of came out of the blue, caught me off guard. And then you also had Mt. Gox, which I actually don't think is as bearish, still don't think is as bearish as people think. I think a lot of that Bitcoin is going to find its way into the altcoin markets. Obviously, some will get sold off. And then also the US moving around some Bitcoin and selling some Bitcoin here, as well as a couple of whales. And then miners, since the halving, have been just pounding the markets with Bitcoin. So you have all those overhead sources combined at once, just crushing the market. So yeah, I think ultimately we do resolve upwards eventually. We've got a nice FTX distribution of around $15 billion coming in by the end of the year. So I think that's gonna run a lot of, or offset a lot of this supply that's getting sold. So still bullish going into the end of the year, but definitely in survival mode, not wanting to get liquidated, not trying to take anything for granted, not trying to get too cute or too crazy here while the market's spewing.
I took away was the biggest. What I took away from yesterday was the fact that the biggest buyer of Bitcoin recently, or the one that's putting the most buy pressure on the books, comes from the ETFs, right? I mean, you would have. We look every day at these inflows that these ETFs are accumulating, and we had a holiday, so the ETFs were pretty much closed, and so you had all of the sell pressures. You had all these different sellers dumping on the market essentially, right? Mt. Gox,
You have the uh
Deutschland.
the Deutschland. So yeah, the Germany. And so you had this list of sellers and the biggest buyer had to take the day off, right? And so I think that's what we saw. And so you had this perfect storm of large wallet selling, large wallet selling, large wallet selling, and the biggest buyer, well, they had the day off because, well, they operate on the stock exchange. Stock exchange was closed yesterday. And so I think that's why we saw the price go as far down as we did, not to mention lots of leverage in the system. So, all of these long positions help facilitate that downward drawdown. We saw the price dip all the way down to 53,000 briefly. And it wasn't there long. It was, maybe 10 minutes at times.
It was
but
a pretty nasty week.
yeah, it was a few different times I saw throughout the day within like a 4 or 5 hour window where we did briefly drop under 54,000. And I mean, is that
Let me ask you this question. I was going to ask you.
sure?
With everything Forrest kind of mentioned, everything going on in Germany, Mt. Gox, yada, yada, yada. Are you surprised that we're at $56,300 right now?
56. I'm not
Because we were at
surprised.
60, right?
Okay. I'm not at all surprised. And back to the narrative of ETF and their dominance of the market as of lately. I'm not surprised that we woke up this morning and we had Bitcoin back to 56. I think that now you're starting to see, hey, retail, as far as that's found on the New York Stock Exchange, that TradFi money that has been accumulating Bitcoin, these people are seeing a value, right? I mean, how many people woke up this morning and were like, wow, you know what? I was buying Bitcoin at 65, 68, and these are, professional investors, hedge funds, and institutions. There had to have been some percentage of people that woke up like, you know what? I got to get a piece of the pie here. I've been accumulating at 60 plus, and now we have the desirable asset, and it's at deep discount. So not surprised to see it bounce back. I am a little surprised at how much it did dump. And the one thing that we have been echoing here was when you consolidate for long periods of time, you get big moves. Now, we had anticipated, because we were in a bull market, and we're generally in bull markets, you trend up and to the right. You figure you consolidate for 3 months. Probabilistically, you're going to have a breakout to the upside, right? That's just the trend. But what we did see was the opposite, and we did see that breakout, but it was to the downside. And so, we knew it was coming. It went the other way.
Do you still think we're in a bull market?
Oh, 100%.
Forrest, what are your thoughts on this topic? And I think it's a fair conversation to have, right? Do I probably think that the top is in? No. But what are your thoughts on the current, how price action has played? We've seen things this cycle we've never seen. We've seen Bitcoin hit a new all-time high before the halving. Never seen that. We've seen, and I've seen charts everywhere from some of the top analysts talking about how accelerated this cycle has been so far. I saw over the weekend posts about, that we have that Wall Street chart where it talks about the psychology of the trader and talk about, hey, are we in complacency where we're all assuming we're still in a bull market, the price is going to bounce back, but we're really going to spill off? What are your thoughts now, today, at this current moment, with everything that you've seen happen for us over the past few months? Do you still think we're in a bull market? We had Magic on the show Tuesday. He said he was 50-50 on whether the top was in. Where do you land?
No, I don't personally think the top is in. One of the other things that I'll mention, because it's relevant, that led me astray was the strength that we've seen out of equities in the stock market. Stock market's ripping to all-time highs. DXY is falling down. So on all other fronts, got everything correct in terms of, risk assets in general. Is just Bitcoin overhead hitting the market that it did not foresee to have a huge impact. So no, I mean, there's a chance. It's more the question. More relevant question, I think, is like, do you think equities top the top for equities and risk assets in general is in? Because if that top is not in, then I don't think the Bitcoin and crypto top is in. I think if stocks continue to rip and equities continue to rip and risk assets in general continue to rip, we'll see a recorrelation of Bitcoin and the crypto market towards those assets that has just recently been suppressed by these large Bitcoin sell-offs. So also, like I said, FTX, $15 billion into the hands of crypto investors by the end of the year. I think that as long as we don't just pile, and the elephant in the room, right, is potential recession. We've got an inverted yield curve for a very long time. We've got rising unemployment, like things. We've got inflation potentially ticking back up. Everyone's talking about rate cuts. Like macro is still an uncomfortable discussion, but as long as stocks are at all-time highs and continue to rip, I don't want to get positioned too bearish too soon and think that the top is in for crypto. I think there will be a bounce back recorrelation at some point.
One area of concern for me is how much, or the fact that Ethereum's under $3,000. I think that's pretty significant, and that has been historically a very strong number for either support or resistance. It was over 2 months ago we were under the $3,000 mark, and it's very, very interesting because you do have this might be a once in a lifetime opportunity where you have the ETF going live and this next week. So next week the ETF goes live for Ethereum, and we're seeing prices we haven't seen for 60 days. There's a steeper discount on Ethereum right now versus Bitcoin as far as where it was earlier this week. And, will this $3,000, which is now resistance, will that stay in play over the weekend? I think it might. I think that today, tomorrow, and maybe Sunday morning, we won't see Ethereum over 3,000. But I think that what's going to happen is you're going to have an anticipation for this ETF. And I think that Sunday night, we're going to see an absolute explosion on ETH. I think that people are going to be preparing their portfolio for what is going to be this surge of liquidity when the Ethereum ETF goes live next week. I mean, just very interesting how big of a drawdown. I mean, 5% in the last 24 hours. It's down 12% on the week. It's under $3,000. And it was a month ago at $4,000, basically $3,800, $3,900. So I don't know. Do you guys look at ETH as an absolute steal right now? Because I mean, at 2,900 versus 4,000, I mean, it'll be back at 4,000, right? I mean, don't you agree that after this ETF goes live, that you probably get $4,000 ETH, or do you think that's not?
I don't know. I think everyone expected this massive rally with Bitcoin with ETFs, and we didn't get that, right? We saw a lot of.
Oh, we did. It just took 1 week, and I don't mean like buy it today and then
we saw a lot of outflows, right? A lot of sell pressure from Grayscale. We did get
for 1 week.
Well, it continued. And it depressed the price or the potential price appreciation.
But from
we didn't get that
price, from a price perspective, it was 1 week where Bitcoin was not making up ground, right? We went from I think it came out at 44,000 was when the ETF for Bitcoin came out. It dropped down to 40,000 the first week, and then after that, it went up to 48 to 50, 55 to 60, and then, broke all-time highs. And so, I mean, call me crazy. I just think it's going to follow the same recipe. I think that next week it goes live. It drops down to, say, maybe it drops down to 2,700. Maybe it drops down to 26. I'm not exactly sure the number. Maybe it doesn't drop down at all. But what I anticipate is that the following week, once the Grayscale fund reaches market and that premium gets wiped away, that we're off to the races, man. I think that $4,000 or $5,000 Ethereum happens this month, man. And it's not that crazy. We were at 4,000 just a month ago. I think that 4,000 or 5,000 is within the next 3 weeks.
What do you think, Forrest?
Yeah, I think ETH is a decent bid down here. The one thing that is of note today is like you look at what ecosystems are bouncing back the hardest. You look at Solana is like up 5 or 6% on the day, or like 4 to 6%. ETH, I'll get that number right now, is still down 3% on the day. You look at the ETH ecosystem, like Arbitrum is trading below. Like Arbitrum is the number one L2 for Ethereum by TVL. It is trading below bear market lows, which is alarming, right? So you've got, from an ecosystem perspective, what's bouncing back much harder today is Solana. You look at Bonk and you look at WIF, like the two leading meme coins on Solana, they're up 10% plus today. You look at Pepe, the leading meme coin on Ethereum, and it's flat or a little bit down. So the market's forward looking, and the way the market participants that are bidding this dip hard are positioning is they're positioning the Solana ecosystem. So I still think from just a flows perspective, overhead perspective, you don't like everyone kind of talks about like the ideal portfolio being, consisting of Bitcoin, ETH, and Solana. I'd want to be much more heavily weighted ETH and Solana. Solana because it's showing strength, ETH because we've got the ETF catalyst, and much less weighted towards Bitcoin. I know people, talk about that being the anchor of a portfolio, but again, that's where all the sell pressure is coming from. You don't have Germany selling off ETH and Solana. You don't have the US selling off ETH and Solana. You don't have Mt. Gox distributing ETH and Solana. I think right now Bitcoin is kind of suppressing ETH and Solana. But in terms of what actually takes off once Bitcoin finds stable ground and stable footing and kind of recovers the range, I think it's going to be ETH and Solana. But I'm honestly leaning a little bit more towards Solana based off what we're seeing today in the markets.
You think Bitcoin finds its ground and maybe consolidates back at, what do you consider for your thesis there, where you have all this sell pressure on Bitcoin, it finds its grounds, as you said. What is that? Is that back at the $60,000 to $68,000 channel that we were at, and then just consolidate there, or do you think it's hanging out here at the sub 60?
Over 59K, I start to get a little, is kind of like 59K was my range low. So we get back above 59K and we hold a day or two above 59,000. I think that's stable footing for Bitcoin. I still think we could have another stab down for Bitcoin and go to like 53K or, high 50, maybe even 50 if things get really ugly. And like tomorrow's going to be a really telling day because we've seen every single Saturday, you look at the volatility and the liquidity on Bitcoin, it just dries up because the ETFs aren't trading, right? So if, and it's probably unlikely that if Germany's using like Coinbase I don't know. I doubt they're going to dump it on an illiquid Saturday, but if they just decide to be dumb, right, and not a sophisticated seller, they could come in and just dump it on a Saturday, and that could drive us down to like 49, 50K. I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, they dumped yesterday for us.
So I'm not saying like the bottom's necessarily in, but stable ground for me for Bitcoin is like 59K or above. I think you can start to add on a little bit of risk, and then once we recover 59K, then I think the bottom is fairly well established or fairly likely to be in.
You mentioned them not dumping on illiquid days. They dumped yesterday, but right? That's Europe. They don't celebrate 4th of July, so they're operating. They operate Monday through Friday. They're if you go to Europe, you go to Portugal, you go to France. They operate. Their business operates. Their banks operate Monday through Friday. They're closed on Saturdays and Sundays and at nights. Same here. But this was a U.S. holiday, and so the ETF pressure was suppressed. But from a government standpoint, the government's open on yesterday. And so I'm sure that Germany was not like, hey, it's a U.S. holiday, let's not sell. Like, no, they're just doing their thing, but they're going to be closed. Germany's government officials aren't going to be coming in on their day off on Saturday to sell Bitcoin. I think
you never know, yeah. Forrest, I
want the wrong country.
No, it's not. Anyways, Forrest, you mentioned the S&P, and I want to share a chart here. So in the orange, the line, not the candles, you have the S&P 500, and in the candlestick is Bitcoin. And you can see here over the last year, it's been fairly correlated outside of, and that all changed around May 1st, where we saw, as Forrest mentioned, the stock market, S&P, make all-time highs and Bitcoin start to trend down. Do you think this trend continues, or do you think Bitcoin eventually catches back up to the S&P 500? And I'm going to ask you the same question. I want you guys to keep one thing in mind. Is it necessarily a bad thing if these are inversely correlated? Forrest, I'll go to you first.
No, so yeah, I mean, you can see the correlation here up until a certain point, and that certain point is where I believe we started seeing some of the supply hitting the market and accelerating our downtrend. And this is, again, one of the things that threw me off, because some of the indicators that I look at for risk assets like DXY and like, the equities markets and like gold and silver are all flashing, hey, green light into that big, you can see it right before we started taking a dive, that big inverse head and shoulders on Bitcoin. Where if it would have followed the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ, we'd be sitting at like 85K right now.
Yep.
So that was super, super tricky. I do think we'll have a bounce back. The last time we, decorrelated was actually last summer, and we had this massive bounce back. So you see that last breakdown, where we decorrelated. Yep. There's that inverse head and shoulders, and it even extends a little bit further to the left and right if you look. But yeah, I do think we'll snap back once we get through some of the supply, and that I don't know how fast we'll snap back, but again, we're seeing, I think the official count is if everything got liquidated, it would be 22 billion, but we know not everyone's going to sell their Mt. Gox distribution. And we've got 15 billion coming in from FTX, from the FTX distribution. So that's supposed to go out by the end of the year. When that hits the tape, I think that's where, we probably recorrelate and snap back. And who knows what will happen with the stock market in the meantime. DXY, dollar strength index, right now is down significantly and falling out of a big trend. And it's only been propped up by a really weak yen, right? We see the Japanese yen has been super, super weak lately, which has been propping up DXY. DXY could potentially drop significantly if we see the yen find some stable footing. So, you kind of have that big head and shoulders playing out on DXY as well. So yeah, there you go. So, I mean, in terms of things that we're looking at in risk assets, I mean, for the time being, they seem pretty healthy. Again, longer term time frame, 6-12 months down the road, we got to be careful because we've got some, indicators like unemployment rising and recession indicators. But no, I do think we'll see a snapback out of Bitcoin once we absorb some of this supply.
Rob, what are your thoughts on the inverse correlation? Do you think that would be actually a good thing?
I think that the measure of the S&P is an overall measure of the economy and investor sentiment, right? And so when you see the S&P fall off of all-time highs and go into a bear market or a massive correction like we saw post 2021 when the Fed announced their interest rate cuts, I think it's just an overall measure of investor interest. And so if investor interest, if people are investing money, if they're printing, if the government's printing and the value of the dollar is decreasing, so that the value of assets, commodities are going up because of inflation, you have to account for the fact that Bitcoin is going to follow that. Now, are there going to be deviations? Yes. Was the market perhaps a little overbought post the ETF? Maybe Bitcoin, well, we know that Bitcoin ran to all-time highs prior to the halving, which has never happened. So I think that what we had was an overbought market for where we were in the cycle. But the overall trend is that your money's worth less, and at least worth less than it was at the beginning of the year. So assets and commodities are going to be priced higher in those dollars. And so when we look at this, I think it's a natural pullback. We see it over and over again. It's not anything new. Every bull market cycle, we move up and then we have 20% corrections. And we didn't even see a 20% correction, or did we? Did we get to the full 20%?
Bitcoin?
Yeah, and I would say on the week it was 7%, but I mean, Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I don't. It's not out of the ordinary. If anything, it's actually less than what we've seen in the past. And so, could it draw down further? I think yes. But when you look at the S&P 500, it's just basically telling you what is the direction of the economy going. What is the direction of the market in its entirety? I think that we are in a bull market, and so this is just a natural pullback because we had a little bit of overbought Bitcoin here in the beginning. Now, I did want to give a little shout out to Dixie Flatline earlier. Dropped a $20 super chat saying, DCA, don't panic, nothing changed. Yeah, and from the perspective of altcoins, that's a little bit different. I think that you need to get people in profit for small alts to really to run, right? And I mean that's the trickle down effect. It happens every bull market cycle. Bitcoin breaks all-time highs. Then people are in profit for Bitcoin and Ethereum, whether they just bought it in spot or selling, or they're in leverage positions. But people are taking money off the table and moving it down in the altcoin list. So I think that the altcoins might take a little while. I think that it might come in that September, October, November, maybe December before we start seeing majority of the alts breaking all-time highs, or at least our favorite picks picking all-time highs. But I think that Bitcoin will be back in the driver's seat later this month.
I want to talk about this, and then Forrest, we'll go to you for a BTC chart if you don't mind. So just want to point this out. Yesterday, we saw the largest liquidation event since the FTX collapse. You can see here, right here was the FTX collapse back in November of 2022. And yesterday was the largest, close to $1 billion on a day where, again, the ETF markets were closed here in the United States. This is the one benefit, or one of the benefits of having these TradFi investors, these asset managers who invest based off a percentage of their portfolio. So when they bought Bitcoin, they decided to allocate 5% of their portfolio or net worth or their fund to Bitcoin at $70,000. Well, when the price is at $55,000, now that 5%, I'm just going to throw round numbers out there. I know this isn't perfect math. But that 5% goes down to 4%. Well, guess what they're going to do guess what they're going to have to do to bring that back up to 5% is they're going to have to buy more Bitcoin. Obviously, the inverse is true as well. But this is one thing that people point to, right? Some of the smartest people in our space, not just in our space, but in the TradFi space, that is going to lessen the volatility of Bitcoin is because of this resizing of portfolios throughout the years. If it goes up, they'll resize down. If it goes down, they'll resize up. And so it should bring a little more equilibrium to price action of Bitcoin. But speaking of price action on Bitcoin, Forrest, you mentioned you think there might be another stab down. I've heard some analysts talk about, hey, if we lose that 53K level, there's really nothing between that and like 44. What are you seeing on the charts for BTC?
Yeah, definitely. Let me share my screen here. Go over to Bitcoin. Yeah, and there's a number of ways you can look at Bitcoin here, right? Right now, I've got a lot of margin pressure levels marked out because we do have quite a lot of leverage trading in the market. But I'll just kind of highlight the range that we've seen and the range that I want to see get recovered, right? So I know it's kind of sloppy. I've got these levels marked out for me, and it's gotten kind of busy and difficult to read. But basically, we get back up here. That's very bullish, right? And I think one of the best things that I can kind of drive home, I'll switch to a different chart in just a second, is how bullish range recoveries generally are. Here's an example of a range recovery, right? We lost the range after the ETF, right? And then once we recovered it, held it, consolidated above it, we saw a massive run. As far as downside targets, it's really tough to sit and say what a downside target is, because we're seeing we're seeing spot selling, right? We're seeing overhead, and it's like, unless you have like pretty advanced order book tools, which even those aren't going to be able to gauge how much demand is actually going to be able to come in at certain levels if we actually get to these levels, to be able to absorb some of that sell pressure, right? We know Germany still has like 40,000 Bitcoin left to sell. They've only sold like 50,000. Now we know the market is fairly forward looking and likes to price as much of that in as possible ahead of time, but that doesn't change the fact that they still have a lot of Bitcoin to sell. So essentially what's happening is prices being driven down to the bid, right? Or where are those limit orders that are going to get filled by that 40,000 Bitcoin as they sell it? Well, recently we've seen, quite a lot get bought up at the bottom of the range, right? A lot of people trying to hold this range, thinking it would hold, ended up buying a lot here. Then it spilled over once we lost the range. And we saw quite a bit of buyers step in last night in this kind of 53 to 55K pocket. Right now, where I would expect a lot of orders to be living is in this pocket over here. I know a lot of people are targeting $50,000 to $53,000. I would imagine that a lot of buyers step in this region if we see another stab down. And again, we've seen massive liquidations. Generally, when you see those massive liquidations, that is a very big buy signal and a very strong, potential bottom signal. If we go out to, and I actually want to go to this other, Bitcoin chart, because I've got some other stuff marked out. Here we are. Actually, it's the next one down. Here we go. Got too many of them. And this kind of shows range recoveries, but it also shows the potential for us to print some pretty strong bullish divergence on the daily chart, which is historically a very, very good bottom signal. Again, it's really difficult to gauge, where a bottom is going to come in when you've got such a large amount of spot selling going on, where the spot sellers are not necessarily concerned with price. They're just trying to move off of their Bitcoin like Germany is. We've potentially made we have made a lower low in price, but if we make a higher low in RSI down here, which would be determined by whether we close today and maybe tomorrow and the next day green, that would be very, very bullish. And that would kind of be in line with a 59K range reclaim. If we go straight up above 59K from here, to me, that is very, very bullish. I'm not convinced we will. I'm more looking forward to July 11th, mainly because we've got CPI data coming in on July 11th. And I personally believe that the CPI data is going to come in very low because what we're seeing in trueflation. So I think that we could take another stab down in the meantime, but I think a bottom forms time around this week, I would imagine. Could be wrong there. I was wrong on, thinking that a bottom would form around $61,000, $62,000. And then the last thing I want to say on this chart, and one of the clearest bottom signals that you're going much, much higher, besides the the bullish divergence to look out for on the daily, besides the range, or not besides the range of the reclaim, but actually is a range reclaim. Right. So you can kind of see out every major range reclaim here, and range reclaims work in both directions, right? In a bear market, you deviate above your range and then, come back down below. That's very bearish, right? But historically, I mean, we put in the bear market bottom when we reclaimed this range, right? We had a bank collapse, and we lost the range and then reclaimed it really quickly. I forget what happened over here, but we essentially reclaimed the range, went higher, right? And then even on a smaller time frame, the ranges can be very tight and lack volatility like we did last summer, but we still ran the lows of the range and reclaimed it. Same thing going into post ETF, right? Our ETF high, we had a bunch of grayscale Bitcoin being sold off, and then we reclaimed it. When we reclaimed it, every time we've seen a pretty big leg up. Right. So if we reclaim this range, the expectation would be, hey, the market's ready. It's resolved, it's absorbed supply, and it's ready to move higher. So
Forrest,
I know long-winded there, and I know it's been droning on, but essentially you can be patient here and simply wait for Bitcoin to reclaim. You did not have to buy altcoins in Bitcoin and Ethereum at the absolute lows, the Pico bottom over here, to do really, really well in the market, right? If you waited for the range reclaim and you waited for it to get back to 42K and then you bought, you did really well still, right? So you can wait here for Bitcoin to go back up to 60, 61, 62, 63K and then buy that and probably do really, really well versus trying to buy the bottom and then, getting chopped up and losing a bunch of money if we go down to 50K.
Now you're saying that you feel pretty confident bottom is somewhere kind of in or nearby or in the range. But now, what would be kind of the doomsday scenario? What are some numbers looking like? Let's just say that Germany comes in, hammers the price down further, and then you also add in perhaps some aggressive selling from Mount Gox, maybe throw in a bad narrative. Maybe the SEC has some big
US government
lawsuit.
stuff.
Yeah, let's just say that we next week we really just get negative downside pressure due to news, and we lose some support levels. What are some like realistic downs? And I say realistic because everyone could throw out some. Well, it could go to 30,000, it could go to 28. But what are some realistic like downside scenarios if we get more downside sell pressure, just get hammered by these large nation states and institutions on selling, and we just don't have the buy on the back end? What do you think that looks like ultimately?
Yeah, so the doomsday scenarios would be here. Like first, you'd expect a pretty strong bounce at 48K. That would run this liquidity pocket over. It would also be trying to bounce off of this prior high, the ETF high. So it'd be a full retrace down to the point at where we opened the ETF. 48K is also a big resistance level that could potentially, from last market cycle, a really, really big level that would provide a pretty nice bounce. So 48K is be like my base case, like bear target. I don't think below 48K. I really don't think below 48K. Like we'd have to get some really, really nasty selling. Just like Germany trying to really accelerate their dumping of their Bitcoin and just dump at a faster and faster pace. I don't think that's going to happen. Like the U.S. would have to just come in and just obliterate the markets with all of the Bitcoin that they'd be dumping, and that would suck. But 36K would be the full 50% retracement, which is about as bad of a retracement as we've ever seen in like a post-halving scenario, right? If we go back over to our prior, our last market cycle, big correction that we ended up running all the way back from, that was a full 50% correction. Right. It was technically like a 56% correction, but from that lower high over here, full 50% correction, that's the 1x short margin pressure level. That's essentially where the risk reward on shorts is just tapped out, right? People trying to short the market are just getting, ridiculous with their downside targets, and becomes very, very unlikely that you make any money on. Like, imagine we saw Bitcoin get obliterated to 36K. Are you going to try to short the market down at 36K? No, only the bearish, the most bearish people are going to do that. And like most people are going to be starting, hey, this is a really cheap, I'm going to throw everything I've got left in my wallet into Bitcoin. I'm going to be a buyer here with what I've got left. I'm not going to look to make money on the downside. That is the bear target. 30, that is like doomsday, 36K. That is a full 50% correction. That's about as bad from our lower high. That's about as bad as we've ever seen in a bull market. And you can go back to previous bull markets and you can see 40% corrections with some regularity, and a 40% correction from our all-time high would put us right in that kind of 43K pocket, which I think is realistic. But really 48K would be like, hey, if things get really ugly from here, and they're already kind of ugly, but if things accelerate to the downside from here, I'm going to be getting pretty aggressive at 48K. I think we bounced before then. And you can actually see, like, where did we just recently bounce, right? We bounced on this 3X, right, from our last local high. We bounced right here last night on this 54K level. That's because the shorts are getting worse risk reward. You can't short the market anymore on 3X leverage and maintain a liquidation point above this double top, right? And that's a big incentive. And a lot of shorts are closing here. A lot of shorts are saying, hey, the risk reward's not that great here anymore. I'm just going to close. And when shorts close, they're essentially buying back their position, right? And you get a bounce. That next incentive to get a really big bounce like that is like 48K, and it's a big structural level. So Yeah, in between, we've got this pocket of liquidity over here, but yeah, 48K. I'd be looking to do the same thing, right? You look at 48K, you buy it aggressively, and then you turn self 53K as like a dead cat bounce just in case, and then you let the market sort itself out. But yeah, that's the more bearish target. July 11th. If we get low CPI numbers, I do think that we could reclaim 59K. If you go to Truflation, inflation numbers fell off a cliff, down from like 2.5% to like 1.8% below the Fed's target. I know Truflation is, its own little source and they use their own sources of data, but there's the first major decline we've seen in inflation numbers in Truflation. So I think we could beat expectations. Coins are cheap. People, have a reason to bid. We may reclaim. So, open to both scenarios.
I want to share a video from none other than the man who's probably actively looking to raise money to buy more Bitcoin. That is none other than Michael Saylor. He was asked in an interview, does the price volatility of Bitcoin shake your confidence? And listen to what he had to say.
Does your faith ever get shaken, especially during these very volatile periods where Bitcoin has had a steep sell-off?
No, in my entire career, I've never seen anything as compelling and unstoppable as Bitcoin. I'm extraordinarily enthusiastic. There are 8 billion people on the planet that need digital property, and Bitcoin is the dominant digital property network. So if you zoom out and you ask the question, how are you going to provide economic prosperity to billions of people at the speed of light over a computer network? There's no better idea than Bitcoin.
No better idea than Bitcoin. Also,
the Bitcoin's down so hard. My man put on a suit and tie.
No, this was not. It was from a little while ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But still, I think the it's funny though. I think the
black shirt all day, black shirt, 2 buttons unbuttoned. Kind of almost like Big
he's
Rob.
even got a tie on, so it's important. And then we have this piece of news. McDonald's. Have you seen their new billboard here? Hey, crypto bros, we are hiring. Funded partly by Brad Sherman from the Senate. And then we had President Biden. Some comedic relief here. My man thought it was Christmas instead of 4th of July. And what do I mean? Well, let's take a listen.
And we give thanks to our Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, the extraordinary President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Ho, ho, ho. Happy
Biden.
Ho, ho, ho. Happy Independence Day.
He almost said Happy New Year. Like he was like, well, no, don't do it.
She almost introduced him as a vice president. He's over here saying ho ho ho, coming down the chimney with some presents. And so
you still think he's going to, a little outside of crypto here. Do you think that, and I mean, this does involve crypto ultimately, the political landscape here going up for re-election, but you think he bows out?
No.
You think he keeps the Democratic nomination?
I do. I think that or they'll push him aside and they'll bring up
from my understanding is that they're not going to push him aside. They don't think they really have the means to do so, that he would have to voluntarily step down. And I know that the polls have come back since that debate.
Listen, Hunter Biden is advising him, okay? I'm not even trying to be funny. I'm being serious. Anyways, what does that have to do with crypto? Well, we know that the current administration hasn't been very favorable or friendly to cryptocurrency, including some of the unelected bureaucrats have been put in place, Gary Gensler. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But there was a article from the Financial Times or a headline talking about if Trump gets elected, we could see a big rally in crypto. And so potentially, we do know it's going to be a pretty big week. But I do want to share this. We've been talking a lot about Germany selling. There is one person in Germany that is not a fan of the government selling, and that is the MP Joanna Kotar actually holds Bitcoin, and she says the government should stop selling. At least there's a couple of smart people over there in Germany. Crypto accounts controlled by the German government received around 1,900 Bitcoin, worth around $111 million. Last night, as part of an apparent ongoing sell-off, she described the sale of Bitcoin as not sensible and counterproductive. Definitely agree with that one.
You think that they'll look in hindsight and say like, crap, look at the price of Bitcoin? Because here's the thing, they're selling now at 60,000, but how much is the price of Bitcoin going to be in, say, 3 months from now? I mean, we all agree that we're in a bull market, right? You're going to agree, Forrest, you agree we're in a bull market, still going to trend up and to the right, correct?
Think so.
Yeah.
So,
Let's hope so.
if that's said, then 2 to 3 months from now, I mean, you anticipate $80,000 to $90,000 Bitcoin. At least that's where I think Bitcoin will be at come fall and early winter. And that's a few short months from when Germany decided to sell. So I mean, will they reflect on their sales? I mean,
Probably not.
because also the U.S. has also got to be looking at that situation. It was back in in March. March is when the U.S. was selling, and
The one that's the one that really does not make sense to me. Like you literally print your own money, and then you sell a commodity to get more of the money that you can just print more of. It makes absolutely no sense. Hopefully, whether it's the same administration or new administration, they come to their senses and realize that, hey, there is zero reason for us to sell Bitcoin for dollars when we can just print dollars, and we can also have Bitcoin just in case. You never know. So but
the thing is, the printing generally comes from policy, right? Or at least it has of lately. So lately we've seen the printing by, hey, we're sending financial aid or military support to these countries or for this infrastructure act, but they're not printing. The U.S., at least not right now, isn't in an environment where they're printing to prop themselves up economically, right? They're not printing to say, hey, we want to print so that way we can buy gold. They're not doing that right now. So the printing's coming from the political side where it's all policy, procedure, financial aid, military assistance. And so to answer your question, David, like they could print to acquire commodities, but that's outside of the blueprint for the U.S. government right now. Now they have in the past by buying their own bonds, by quantitative easing, by investing in institutions, but that's not right now. I mean, we are printing, but it's for a whole different game. So at the end of the day, countries do need to sell their forfeitures and what they've seized from other countries, from criminals, things like that. However they acquired that Bitcoin, because what Germany did not do was file a press release and say, "Hey, we're going to go buy Bitcoin." They didn't do that. They got it by seizing it, and now they're selling it. And so if the U.S. or Germany seizes a bunch of Rolls Royces and Rolexes and Lamborghinis from a criminal enterprise, procedure is they're going to sell it. But at what point do you say, hey, maybe we shouldn't sell it? And so I don't know, man. I think that countries are going to reflect on it. I mean, we had 10,000 Bitcoin, just shy of 10,000 Bitcoin being sold by the U.S. earlier this year, back in March. And price of Bitcoin substantially, where was the price of Bitcoin in March? So you know what? The U.S. actually didn't make too bad of a move. Back in March, $63,000 Bitcoin. So did the U.S. know something we didn't? So they sold $63,000 Bitcoin. So they're actually in profit on their sell for the U.S.
There are a couple things that are going our way, and let me go through these really quick, and then we'll take a look at the rest of the market. So, Mr. 100, this is from Invest Answers, hasn't lost faith. Just stepped in and bought a massive 700 Bitcoin, around 55K. So 4 separate buys, 100, 100, 100, and then almost 400 in one day. So as price dips, guess what? We have more buyers and we have more ways for people to buy. We also have this very interesting here. Money market funds. So think of this as a savings account, okay? Money market funds just hit a new record of $6 trillion. 51.2 billion flowed to these funds in the week ending July 2nd, the largest amount in 3 months. Since the Fed began hiking rates in March of 2022, $1.6 trillion has flowed into money market funds. Money should continue flowing until the Fed starts cutting rates. The market is currently pricing 2 rate reductions in 2024, with the first one happening in September. The rotation of this capital back into equities could drive new all-time highs. You can see here this chart from Kobayashi letter. So very interesting there. And then taking a look at the rest of the markets, we see again ETH under $3,000, BNB at $497, Solana $135, XRP 42 cents, Toncoin. I was hoping this thing would get under $6. I was going to buy some. $7.27, Doge at 10 cents, and Cardano rounding out the top 10 at 35.3 cents.
I want to interrupt this to say that
Well, you
the
never
Bitcoin, no, I don't. The Bitcoin selling has been avenged. What do I mean? Well, Spain has eliminated Germany from the euro.
That's what you get.
That's right. So Germany is selling, pissed off Spain. They kicked them out of the euro. So thank you so much.
Spain.
Yeah, there you go. So,
I would have loved to thank Italy, but they're not in anymore.
you know, Portugal is actually playing France.
I think Rocco's actually really mad.
So,
Rocco's sorry, man.
For my Ola fans out there, after today's show, right after, Portugal plays France as well. So,
Oh, Les France.
yeah.
Is France selling Bitcoin too?
How's the U.S. doing, by the way?
They're so bad. They suck so bad. Okay, so I want to ask you, Robin and Forrest, and I'll go to Forrest first. What in the top 10? And I know you mentioned Solana ETH. So outside of Solana and ETH, Forrest, XRP at 42 cents, Toncoin. Are you intrigued by Toncoin at all? You think a $7 entry is good? Doge at 10 cents, Cardano at 35 cents. What do you think is a good plus EV play here for, let's just say, the next 4 weeks?
4 weeks. Okay. ETH and Solana. I wouldn't touch Toncoin, but the ecosystem is very intriguing to me. I think Toncoin is a little risky because if you have some of those larger wallets decide that, hey, I'm out, I'm going to start distributing, price could be rough. Up until now, it's held up really, really well. But where I'm more interested is like the ecosystem tokens, like the DEXs and the meme coins. I think have potential, but that's going to be pretty degen and low market cap. Look, I'm long Dogecoin right now. Have been for a while. Still holding my position and adding more. I think it's going to get neat. I don't, next 4 weeks probably too short term. But ETFs in the works. Elon Musk is going to add functionality to X. It's all but guaranteed at this point. It's going to happen. I think it's a patience play, but I'm a fan of Dogecoin. Even at these levels, but for the next 4 weeks, ETH and Solana.
You think Doge,
your best bets?
You think that Doge ETF? I know we talked about it several times, but you think that's around the corner?
Yeah, I agree with Forrest.
The next few months?
I don't know the time frame on it, but it's been confirmed to be in the works by Arthur Hayes, Raoul Powell, somebody else who's fairly notable also confirmed it. Andrew Kang, who's like a big 9-figure crypto whale. Look, it's been confirmed by multiple people that they're trying to get VanEck to file for one. So VanEck's already filed for a Solana ETF. I wouldn't be surprised if they drop a Doge ETF application at some point. And there's no reason not to approve it. Yeah, it's kind of silly. We've had silly ETFs in the past, but there's from even if an Ethereum ETF can get approved and a Bitcoin ETF can get approved from a technological standpoint, there's no reason why Dogecoin has anything about it that isn't, compliant with ETF. There's futures trading on Coinbase now. So, I think we'll get a Dogecoin application. And I think that'll probably be a big spark for alt season if and when we do.
And then Rob, outside the top 10, you have Avalanche at $25. You have Chainlink at $12.42. Near Protocol at $4.50. Anything let's just say numbers 10 through 25. Polygon at 47 cents. Caspa, 16 cents. Anything from 10 to 25 that you think might be a good pickup to kind of buy and hold for, let's just say, 4 weeks.
I think internet computers is the steal of the century here. We know where this chart is going as far as, in the long term, when you zoom out, it already had a pretty big pullback. And so it ran pretty damn hard. I have very little doubt that this will cross the recent highs, and it's significantly down from its recent highs. So, I mean, you're talking a 3x, right? What was that the peak there for
Almost
ICP?
$20.
So yeah, you're sitting at a 3x from $20, and you're talking about a top 25 cryptocurrency. It has a very, very, very strong community. They have a lot of partners. They are pretty much primed to rally off of any big news partnerships. And so I think that they have a few of those coming down the pipeline. So I think that you'll find a scenario where you get ICP making up some of the losses it's recently had, and then you couple that with a couple large headlines. I think that you can easily see a $18 ICP, which is a 3x from where it is now. So, I mean, for me, I think that's the steal of the century for a top layer one project, something that we're pretty bullish on as well. I mean, at the end of the day, everything's on discount. So whatever you're a big fan of, I think you're going to get a good entry position. You think about Cardano is down to 32 cents. You have Caspa down to 16 cents. I do think that Caspa ran pretty hard. So I think that you're going to get better steep discounts. But if you're a Caspa fan, I think now's a great time to get in as well. You had a pullback. We got up to 18 cents, almost 19. I think briefly over 19 cents. But, you could find, it just depends. Whatever you're a fan of, I think right now it's you can't go wrong. There's really nothing that's not on discount outside of Toncoin. Toncoin is really the only one that's still hasn't had that major retracement. But Solana, ETH, I think are no-brainers. I mean, if you're trying to pick up some XRP, why not? Also you have the lawsuit coming to an end.
XRP. People like Forrest say all the time, always have stables on the side, and it's for reasons like this. When we see 15 to 20% drawdowns in the markets, you're going to get them. Bull market, bear market, doesn't matter. Crypto is very leveraged. You're going to get those big pullbacks, and you want to have those bullets aside to shoot from the hip and buy your favorite altcoins. I do want to encourage all of you watching to go follow Forrest on X at Sistine Research. This man puts a lot of good information, a lot of good insight out there, a lot of good opinion, and so highly recommend you do that. Also, while you're there, go follow us as well at Sin City Crypto 1. With that being said, Forrest, thank you again for joining us, my friend. We hope you have a lovely weekend, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Real quick, we had a sharp pullback here on Friday, and so I know I'd like to get the three of us together or actually the four of us. Where do we think Bitcoin's price will be on a Monday? I think that's going to be very interesting. I think we could see
51,250.
51,250. Okay. What do you think, Forrest?
I'm a perma-bull, so right now I think I'm going to say over the weekend we're going to revalidate 59K, and we'll be at 59.5 Monday morning.
Rocco, what do you think? Where do you think we're at on Monday?
65.
65?
Yeah, why not?
Oh, that's
Jesus.
Let's do it.
yeah,
Let's be bullish.
Short squeeze.
That's
Rocco's
it.
very
Let's
bullish.
do it.
Okay. What about you, RPK?
I do think that Monday, I'll say I think we crossed over the 60K. So I would say 60,800. 60,800 is like where we're at.
60,800.
Yeah, the start of our show on Monday.
Okay. Interesting to see what happens. With that being said, Rocco. Before I tornado out here, I want to give a big thank you to our channel sponsor today, Cam's Blue Wire Technology. You want to learn how Cams can help your business scale and grow and maximize your networking, IT, and cybersecurity? Visit BlueWireTech.com. It'll show up on your screen now, or you can click the link in the description of this video. And in honor of Cams, we're going to tornado Cam out of here. Get it? Camera, tornado, Cam, sponsor. Pretty cool, right? Guys, have a great weekend. Hope you have a great 4th of July. We got a video coming out in about 1 hour talking about which altcoins are looking to buy, why the market dipped, what the hell is going on, and why we should see a big rally. Make sure to watch it. We love you guys. Have a good weekend. See you later. Bye.
Everybody know we here for entertainment and info. Gonna show you how to get that big dough. So every day stay tapped in for big facts, no capping. With Bitcoin, if you're in, then you win. We divide the pie with no fraction. It's Big Rob, David. I spit the game, but they gave it. Name the coin that's your favorite. I got dry powder, why save it? To the OGs, new beginners. Special shout out to the well members. Buy the dip, sell winners. Ain't really nothing you can tell sinners. Tune in for the latest new flavors. They gonna teach us mean coins. They polarizing like barbecue chicken pizzas. I laugh with a major grin. Laggers, we trade them in. Baddies, they came to sin. And sinners gon' play to win. Screaming hola till my bags are flowing over. Hold ya to the moon and to the solar. Won't I? Don't be letting FOMO control ya. It's over when the finger tornado close ya.